Hello, this is Dr. Stephen Greer with the World Puja Network, and this is Conversations with Dr. Greer. I'm very excited to be joined today by Charlie Balogh, who's a musician and audio expert who does a lot of work for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, CSETI.org, in analyzing tones and sounds and anomalous events that have happened. And he's been involved with our research group in the Phoenix area since for a number of years, and has been on a number of the CSETI expeditions as well for week-long periods, and has had some really astonishing experiences quite on his own as he began to get involved with the trans-dimensional conscious aspects of interstellar contact. And it's really exciting to have Charlie with us today so he can go through with us some of the really amazing tones and sounds that have emerged from trans-dimensional space-time around us, and she will actually set up to play those for you so that you guys at the World Puja Network listening can hear it, and it'll be heard worldwide, and you'll be able to then hear an explanation of what led up to these amazing tones being heard by our contact group. For those of you who are new to this, I just want to introduce the concept, and that is that back in 1990, about 20 years ago, I founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is a nonprofit organization, a 501c3, that's dedicated to studying the fact that we are being visited by advanced interstellar civilizations, but more importantly, to engage in what we call close encounters of the fifth kind. And a close encounter of the fifth kind is distinguished from the other types of contact events in that we are inviting contact through an organized contact team endeavor, a diplomatic effort, and it's based on a number of protocols, the primal one, the most important one, being the consciousness and the aspect of, as all of you at the World Puja Network will understand, that mind is a non-local, omnipresent field, and that as humans go into a state of quiet awareness, not only can you learn to remote view distant places, but that with extraterrestrial civilizations, their communication systems, which are scalar in nature and which can pick up on directed, coherent thought, you are enabled to contact them and then show them where you're located. So we use awareness and remote viewing and vectoring, as we call it, coherent thought sequencing, through consciousness to make contact. And then it's augmented by the use of lasers as well as tones. And this latter, the tonality, is very important. And as all of you who have studied the Vedas and the Pujas understand, tone precedes light and light precedes form. And the inner tonality of reality is really the first emergence from the unbounded absolute field of pure consciousness as it goes into manifest being. So this is why mantras and sounds and singing and tones and music are so important to culture, not just on Earth, but throughout the cosmos. And I think that understanding that and understanding that technologically there is a component of contact that is tonal is really critically important. And this goes back thousands of years, and we're not going to go into all of that, but in terms of modern history, it's very, very important for people to understand that, and to understand that this is sort of the triad of the contact protocols that CSETI is using involves consciousness, light, and tonality. And the tones that we use, we used to just have the tones from Colin Andrews from the crop circles that were recorded by the BBC and by Colin Andrews' team when this amazing tone appeared omnidirectionally around them, and they got a brief recording of it, and we've been projecting that out into space using radio transceivers and what have you. Now we have a number of other tones, as well as segments of ET voices that have appeared, and much of this has been ramping up in the last 2 years, quite remarkably in the last couple of years. So we want to share a lot of this with you, and that's going to be the real focus of this particular interview, because we have this wonderful expert on sound and tone and audio engineering, Charlie Balogh, with us. So thank you, Charlie, for joining us.
Well, it's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time now, so I'm really excited about doing this.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about, how you got involved with this and the kind of experience you had in consciousness involving that gave rise to the CSETI kind of tonality, one of the tones in the music that you heard during this contact event, and to sort of set the stage for your own involvement.
Well, I first joined CSETI about 1990, and I was or 1991, I should say, and it was as a result of hearing one of your lectures here in Phoenix. I went to my first training in Joshua Tree in 2001, and part of the CSETI contact protocols involves going into meditation. And of course, we use meditation quite extensively throughout that process, not only during the actual contact sessions, but all through the entire training processes, which also include morning meditations as well. During one of these first morning meditation sessions that I had, then this was only the second day of the training, I went into what felt like a lucid dream, only I knew I wasn't dreaming. I was sitting there in my hotel room and just going into meditation, but it was in an immediate effect where I found myself outside in what I felt like was like a field or something like that. And I looked up and I saw the CSETI logo. Now, those of you who are familiar with the CSETI website, we have an artist representation of what I actually saw during that lucid dream or vision or whatever you want to call it. And that'll help in this discussion if you are finding it hard to follow what it is that I'm talking about.
Right, you can go to CSETI.org and see that right now as you're listening if you're at a computer.
That's right, yeah. Well, what I saw was a three-dimensional version of that logo. And as those of you familiar with it, there are three globes or circles or spheres in an equilateral triangle, which are connected by lines or bars. What I saw in that vision was a three-dimensional representation of that. And each one of the globes had a sort of a translucent appearance. Within the globes were specific lights and shapes and forms. The logo it was rotating in a counterclockwise position, and it was huge in my vision. I could guesstimate that it was 150 to 250 feet across. Each one of the globes, in addition to having specific light and structure inside, also had a specific sound, which intrigued me and really surprised me. And it was very lucid. I could hear and see everything that was going on. The first globe had what looked like soft pulsing lights in it. And the music or the sound that I heard mimicked that or gave sort of a sonic representation of that. The second globe had what looked like a crystalline structure in it, very much like a lattice work, only of a very intricate clear crystal with sparkling lights, intensely sparkling lights, and the music again reflected that. The third globe had also crystalline structure in it, but it had movement inside, almost as if there were tiny gears that were rotating around each other. And once again, that sound was in motion, not only within the globe itself, but as the logo rotated, you could hear the sounds. I could hear the sounds passing in front of me, and each one of the connecting rods or lines had a specific sound as well, as though it were some sort of a power transference. That's the only way I can describe it. I'd like to play a little bit of that for you now.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So here it is.
Need to be a little louder.
Okay. This is the first globe. This is the second globe. And this is the third globe. And that's essentially what I heard. Now, what was amazing was, as a musician, I was fascinated by what I was hearing, and people who heard this music asked me if I composed it, and that's not the case. It literally was a transcription of what I heard.
Right.
Yeah, and it was frustrating at the time because I didn't have a keyboard in front of me to try and work out the ideas that I heard. So I had to take notes after the meditation. I came home after the training and then tried to recreate what it was that I heard.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And luckily, of course, one thing we found is that the extraterrestrial civilizations will have contact with people in certain ways where they have a certain capacity. In this case, obviously, since you're a musician and you know about audio and know how to compose and create sound, this was an aspect of their contact given to you that probably only you and a few other people would have been. If it had happened to me, I might have, and I've had experiences like this where I've had the most beautiful tones and music, but I would never be able to reproduce them because I don't know anything about music. And so that's why this is so wonderful, and that's how we have found that this is why it's important to have a team of people from diverse backgrounds as well, is that we find that the ETs will, in a sense, utilize the skills and the gifts that each person has and that each person brings to the process.
Well, what was amazing to me, too, is that, most people think, well, what would extraterrestrial music sound like? And I was quite surprised to find it very tonal and not all that much different than what we're used to listening to, although I don't know if that was specifically geared for me or not with my experience and what we're used to listening to. So it may have been tailor-made for me as opposed to be just sort of a generic sound. Now, what's interesting about that is that on several trainings now, we've been playing this music out in the field within the circle using, a small boom box or something. A few years back, in Joshua Tree, we were on a break, and the music was playing on the boombox, and I decided to take a walk out into the desert just to get away from the crowd for a minute and experience things on my own. And I walked out about, say, 150, 200 yards out into the desert, far enough away that I couldn't hear the music from the group anymore. But I then